And a good Monday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, and X. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand by checking out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website, nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you in part by The Law Group. Visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call at 910-251-6088. But we'll have more on them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. Well, a nice peaceful Monday across the United States of America. Democrats definitely not rioting and attempting to burn Los Angeles to the ground as major protests take place over the weekend, over the last couple of days. And it's so funny because the playbook is so typical. I mean, it is the same rinse and repeat playbook every single time something like this happens. Democrats and the groups that they agitate out in Los Angeles over the last 3 days have decided to take to the streets of Los Angeles because of ICE. They have decided to take to the streets of Los Angeles because they are not in favor of people who are illegally in the country being deported by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They are not a fan of this administration's attempt and strategy to hold individuals who are illegally in the country accountable and do exactly what President Trump campaigned on, which was we are going to send people that are back to their home countries who are not illegally in the United States. That's what the campaign was. That's what 70 plus million Americans voted in favor of. And that's what's played out. So I think it was Friday afternoon. You had ICE roll out a plethora of very strategic raids in the greater Los Angeles area, going after individuals that they had intel on, people that they had information on in a very strategic manner out in Los Angeles. This, of course, spawned a group of left-wing agitators to take to the streets to hurl rocks, water bottles, bricks, fireworks, and other sorts of projectiles at law enforcement, beat law enforcement cars and hit them with skateboards and pipes and other sorts of typical materials that you see out of these left-wing protests. Because we're talking about California and because we're talking about Los Angeles, the mayor and Karen Bass, who is completely incompetent, did nothing. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, did nothing. And the situation, of course, got out of control. And I made this point on my X account yesterday. There's all this controversy and all the mayhem this morning it's now Trump's fault. Trump deployed the members of the California National Guard to protect two federal buildings in California. The National Guard is not roaming the streets of California. Let's make sure we set the narrative straight on this. The president deployed members, about 2,000, of the California National Guard to protect two federal buildings in LA, of which he absolutely has federal jurisdiction over, and absolutely it makes sense to have the National Guard protecting federal buildings. We saw during the Summer of Love in 2020 when left-wing agitators burned down cities all across America, federal buildings torched, complete and total lawlessness. Why? Because Democrats don't want to piss off their base. Democrats don't want to tell their supporters who are out in the streets waving Mexican flags and burning cop cars that they need to go home. So they allow this situation to unfold. They allow the lawlessness. They allow the insanity to go on to a breaking point. And the reality is very simple here. This president, this administration is not going to sit back while left-wing cities are completely mobbed and taken over by left-wing activists and destroyed. The president is not going to sit aside and watch these cities fall to radical, out-of-control liberals. He's just not going to do it. We live in a country of law and order. We do, whether you like it or not. Yes, you can be pissed off about the immigration stuff. That's fine. You want to go have your protest? Fine. The protests don't bother me. I don't care if people want to stand on the side of the road and wave a Mexican flag. I don't care. I think it's stupid. I think the point you're trying to make is ridiculous. But believe me, I'm not losing any sleep over it. But as always the case with these protests that start, they progressively get out of control because nobody tells these individuals to stop. And so what did you watch unfold Saturday and Sunday night in Los Angeles? You watched, at least last night, of course, in In the name of protecting illegal immigration, you had stores being looted and destroyed in downtown Los Angeles, which is pretty typical for whether we're talking about police brutality or whether we're talking about people being kicked out of the country. The only way to have solace is to, in the case of the video I saw this morning on X, robbing a sneaker store in Los Angeles. That is absolutely the only way to get yourself back on the right side of history. Nothing is going to show the Trump administration more that you're not in favor of illegal immigration, like looting a small business and stealing a bunch of shoes. That's absolutely the way that in which I would conduct myself. So you had that taking place last night. You had vehicles being burned in the middle of the street, and all the entire time the narrative was mostly peaceful protests. The entire time. Nothing screams mostly peaceful protest like cities or like cars being burned on the side of the road. I mean, you're looking at the video here for our video audience this morning, a bunch of masked liberals standing next to a burning car in the middle of a city street in Los Angeles with, things written all over it, F the police, F ICE, those kinds of signs being held up by left-wing agitators, all wearing masks while cars are burning in the middle of the road. Does this look peaceful to you? I mean, I'm not trying to blow something out of proportion, but I'm asking a genuine question. When you see this video, does it express a peaceful protest? Does it express a peaceful gathering of people that disagree with what's going on at the national level? No, it's complete and total insanity. It's an anarchist society that these people want to create. Just look at them. Dressed in all black, their whole face is covered, of course. Because they, of course, don't want to be held responsible for their actions while they're waving their Mexican flag in the streets of Los Angeles. Then go protest in Mexico. You know what I love about these things? And I genuinely mean this. These pictures, these videos do more to help Republicans. They do more to help Donald Trump than anything else. These clowns think that they are showing the man up with these riots and with these protests and by burning cars on the side of the road. It does one thing. It shows more and more people how out of control and how deranged the left is. Well, you saw the exact same things take place in 2020 when you had city streets being burned to the ground in the name of racial justice. You had convenience stores. You had fast food joints and restaurants and small businesses all throughout cities in America being looted and ransacked by leftist Democrat progressives, all in the name of racial equality or racial justice. It pins more people against the left. And so I hope this stuff continues. I genuinely do, because this picture, these videos are the greatest campaign ad that the president could possibly hope for. These images exactly exemplify some of the points that the president makes about Democrats and their inability to govern, in the case of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. Radical progressives and their ability to be useful members of society. It is the perfect campaign ad. Wemo cars, self-driving cars burning up on the side of the street. It is a perfect ad for Donald Trump and for Republicans that are pushing strong on this message of immigration. It's the perfect example of it, and it only radicalizes more people against the Democrats. Even if you are in favor of illegal immigration, you are probably not in favor of cars being burned on the side of the road. Now, if you're a far left progressive, sure. But you can look at plenty of people, if you take a slice of the middle section of the American populace, they may have some level of sympathy for those that are in the country, and that's fine. Sympathy for those that are in the country illegally and are being deported by the Trump administration. There's definitely some level of sympathy there. No question about it. But you take that sympathy and then you compare and contrast it with these videos and pictures out of Los Angeles. Complete and total lawlessness. Private businesses being looted and ransacked. Police having rocks and bricks and mortars and fireworks lobbed at them while they're standing on the side of the street doesn't paint a very good picture from the left. And now, because President Donald Trump has deployed the National Guard, it's his fault. I saw this ridiculous post from Gavin Newsom on X earlier this morning. For whatever reason, I didn't pull that up. I've got a bunch of other clips and things. But let me see if I can find this Gavin Newsom tweet real quick, because it's exactly this is Gavin Newsom's post on X. Let's get this straight from Gavin Newsom. Law enforcement didn't need help, which is not true. I'll prove that's not the case. 2, Trump sent troops anyway to manufacture chaos and violence. 3, Trump succeeded. 4, now things are destabilizing and we need to send in more law enforcement just to clean up Trump's mess. This is how Gavin Newsom is framing the situation in Los Angeles. They had it under control. The video I just showed you, did that look like a scene and a situation under control with cars burning in the middle of the street? Is that's under control to Gavin Newsom? He said that's what he claims. Law enforcement didn't need help. Okay, so then they had the situation under control. That's what he's claiming. And so because of the Democrats' inability to get ahead of this situation, because of their inability to stomp this out very early on, they allowed it to go on for 3 days. Today will be the third full day of these protests and riots taking place in Los Angeles, and they undoubtedly will. Because of their inability to get ahead of this, their inability to shut this down, nip it in the butt early on, the president acted. He sent in the National Guard to protect 2 facilities. Now, the left wants to make it out as if the National Guard is roaming the streets of California and shooting and killing protesters, which is not happening. There's no video of that. There's no evidence of that taking place. It's completely and totally manufactured. And so now, because Democrats were unable to control their own, because Democrats once again allowed the activists in these groups to take control and go for what they want as a complete and total anarchy, now it's Trump's fault. So their inability to govern, their inability to lead is now Trump's fault. Just trying to wrap my head around how that works. Trying to wrap my head around how it's the president's fault that Democrats in a Democrat state, in a Democrat city, are looting and rioting, burning cars, attacking small businesses, attacking law enforcement, how that ends up being Trump's fault. He's stoking the flames. No, he's actually not. I watched a video early this morning of an individual shooting lighter fluid or pouring lighter fluid onto a fire. That's the guy that's actually stoking the flames. If you want to be actually legitimate about your argument that you're making, it's not the president and it's not the National Guard. It's these deranged psychopaths on the left that believe the solution to every problem is burning things, attacking law enforcement, and in the case of videos I also saw, attacking the Los Angeles Police Department. Windows in the LAPD headquarters being shattered this morning, late overnight, early morning hours here on the East Coast by these folks in Los Angeles. So I know I get it's a good narrative. I can understand you're trying to gain some sympathy and some support by pinning this violence on the president of the United States, but that's just not how this works. It's the same textbook. That's what I opened the show with. Right? It's the same usual playbook over and over again. These mobs get out of control. You've got Antifa and these other activists that activate when these situations arise. They insert themselves into these groups and lay out total chaos. It's the same thing that happens every time. And because the left has refused to speak against these groups, they continue to feel like they're empowered to act in this manner. And in fact, they are. And in fact, they do. Because Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass don't give a damn. They don't care that law enforcement is having rocks, bricks, frozen water bottles, fireworks lobbed at them. They don't care. If they did, they would have stronger messages than what you're about to hear from the Los Angeles mayor last night. If they did, Gavin Newsom wouldn't be trying to have a pissing match on X with Donald Trump. He would be in the streets of Los Angeles telling people to get the hell out of the streets, go home, and stop. But they don't care. They're in favor of this. However, unlike situations in the past, I suspect, and it already has in large part, but this will continue to backfire on the left. The vast majority, we talk about 80-20 political issues. The vast majority of the American population, regardless of their political affiliation, is not in favor of people burning cars in the middle of the street. They are not in favor of law enforcement having fireworks shot at them, bricks and rocks thrown at them. This is a losing political stance from the left, as many of their issues are. It's a losing issue. It's not popular when regular everyday people that are not even maybe super political turn on the news and see a helicopter flying over and cars burning in the middle of the streets and people waving Mexican flags. Really not a good look for the left. So let's hear the phrasing and let's see how the Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass, we saw how great she handled like the California wildfires, the LA wildfires. She was out of the country for the first couple days of that. We saw how well she handled that situation. Let's see what she's got to say about these LA mostly peaceful protests that have taken place over the last couple of days.
Agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. I want the people of Los Angeles to know that we stand with all Angelenos, no matter where you were born. The First Amendment right gives you the ability, again, to protest peacefully, but it does not give you the right to be violent, to create chaos, or to vandalize property, and that will not be tolerated.
But see, this is the issue. Notice what she said before she talks about the First Amendment doesn't give you the right to be violent. We stand with all Angelenos, which is a ridiculous nickname, but we stand with all Angelenos, regardless of their immigration status, regardless of where they come from. They always have to put in these, what I'll actually call is a legitimate dog whistle to the left, and then say after all of that, we don't want you burning our city to the ground. But we have to set it up and we have to have all of this context as to, regardless of whether you're in the country legally or not, we stand alongside you. You are justifying the actions of these individuals and then immediately turn to, but we don't want you rioting. It just doesn't work.
So I call on all Angelenos to continue expressing your right, your anger, your outrage, but to do it peacefully. Sure. And I just have to say that all of you were there Friday. Everybody knows what happened Friday. A workplace, several workplaces were targeted and raids took place. Now, in the beginning, the administration said they were just looking for dangerous felons, violent people. It's hard to say that that's what they found at a workplace or in a Home Depot parking lot. When this happens, it terrifies people. It sends a sense of fear and chaos in our city. And you well remember a few years ago in the last administration that kids were afraid to go to school. Parents were afraid to go to work. This impacts all of our city. You can't terrify the workforce, and then expect for people to get the jobs done. So if you think about a father that went into a factory and now his family doesn't know where he is, the detainees have not been allowed to speak to legal counsel. That is a marked departure from what has happened in the past. When you think of a mother that might be working in a household, taking care of children on another side of town, that impacts that family as well as her family. And so this is something that I think should not be happening in our city. And I join with the governor in appealing to the administration to rescind the order to federalize the National Guard.
But see, there's the issue. This is not about the National Guard. Karen Bass and Governor Gavin Newsom are not in favor of the administration's policies as it relates to immigration and customs enforcement. They are not in favor of ICE rounding up people who are illegally in the country and deporting them. And that's a fine policy stance to have. You're allowed to have that opinion. That's fine. You're wrong. You're on the wrong side of history with the issue, but that's the stance. The reality is Los Angeles doesn't get to determine whether ICE conducts raids in their cities. Gavin Newsom doesn't get to decide whether immigration officials are in Los Angeles or San Francisco or any other city that's under his jurisdiction. Immigration is not a state issue. It is solely a federal issue. Solely. There's no room for debate. There's no argument. Immigration policy is not set by the state. It is set by the federal government. And this federal government has continued to make it very clear that if you are in the country illegally, there are consequences. If you are in the country illegally, there is a possibility that you are deported. Not law-abiding citizens, not legal aliens, illegal aliens in the United States of America. And so the administration is carrying out exactly the policy platform that it ran on, right? You can hate Donald Trump. You can hate what he's doing, but you can't say that this wasn't expected. You can't say that you are shocked and surprised and you are dismayed by what you're seeing. He ran an entire years-long presidential campaign, in many cases solely on an issue like illegal immigration. Since his first day in the Oval Office back in late January of this year, his stance on this issue has been incredibly clear. It's not been blurry. It's not been ambiguous. His stance on this thing has been as clear as can be. And so now this is starting to roll out. And because that's the case, now if these left-wing agitators and activists feel that they are empowered to burn Los Angeles to the ground, that they are empowered to attack LAPD by throwing rockets and bricks and rocks and all that other stuff at them. I've got some clips on that coming up. So let's hear more from the great mayor of Los Angeles. Here's some more insight from her.
And allow the National Guard to come back under the control of the governor. So with that, we can open it up for questions. Yes.
We're going to start with Lolita and then we'll go to Chip.
Mayor, these protests or demonstrations, I should say, did start out peacefully. You've been here since
Right.
in the morning.
Right.
But then they scattered and people were moving
Right.
around. Where is the LAPD in terms of being here to be able to deal with that and maybe stop them before they get over there?
Sure. Well, I think that basically they were overrun. But what is happening now is that the freeway is cleared. The California Highway Patrol, as you know, is in charge of the freeways. So they have moved all of the protesters back. They still might be there, but they are beginning to be dispersed. But LAPD is on the perimeter, so LAP is actively involved. You know that there were hundreds of protesters on the freeway and thousands of protesters off the freeway. So there is a joint collaboration going with the CHP, the LAPD, and then frankly the National Guard. But you also know that the National Guard is deployed to protect federal property.
Correct.
So there is a National Guard troops in Westwood at the federal building and also here downtown.
Next question.
Now, it's interesting what she just said there, right? Because I just showed you that Gavin Newsom tweet, right? That said local law enforcement didn't need help. This is what Gavin Newsom posted. Yet the mayor of Los Angeles, when asked by a reporter yesterday evening, why was this crowd able to move on? Why was this crowd able to mobilize? She said the police were overrun. So what is it? Local law enforcement either didn't need help and had it under control, or they were overrun. The two things cannot exist simultaneously. One of those has to be true because the other can't be. So Gavin Newsom and the mayor, she probably didn't mean to necessarily say that. Maybe she said the quiet part out loud. But which one is true? They either had control of the situation or they didn't. They either had the situation locked down and under control or they were overrun, which is what the mayor of Los Angeles said last night. So the issue is of exactly that. The police were overrun. And again, the National Guard, admittedly by the mayor of Los Angeles, who you just heard say so, is deployed in 2 areas across the city, protecting federal buildings. The entire California National Guard has not been seized by President Donald Trump in order to roam the city streets and arrest people. The arrests, and there have been dozens of them, have all taken place at the hands of either California Highway Patrol, CHP, or local law enforcement, the LAPD, or other state agencies. It's not being done by the National Guard. So this idea that this narrative that is being spun by the left this morning, I had the pleasure of watching a couple hours of MSNBC last night, is that Trump is taking over the National Guard and that this situation is being now run by the federal government. But it's just not true. There's no evidence to back that up. You've even got the mayor of Los Angeles clearly stating that that's not the case. However, that does not stop the left. That does not stop the agitators from continuing to portray that message, continue to push that narrative out there, knowing damn well what it's going to do. But the reality is very simple. They don't care. And here is the Los Angeles police chief last night talking about this exact issue, talking about the riots, talking about the situation that law enforcement has faced so far, and is completely blowing out the narrative being painted by Karen Bass and the narrative being painted by Gavin Newsom and the rest of those on the left that are all in favor of these out-of-control riots that take place.
From Telemundo 52. Do you think that the presence of National Guard increased the level to this kind of situation? I mean, you said that it's disgusting. You think that if you control it with them, without them, it's going to be a different situation?
You know, I don't know. That's a very interesting question. What was the catalyst for us seeing the second and third day of this becoming increasingly more violent? To be able to say it's because of the National Guard, I can't, because there aren't enough on the ground at this point to make a difference. I've seen civil unrest a number of times before, and generally the second and third days are more violent than the initial phase. And so this is not much different from that pattern. But certainly I think there's a number of things that cause people to come out. Much of it is they watch this and see it on TV, social media, whatever social media outlets they follow, or asking them or telling them to come down and be part of this, and they do that. And they come out here, and many come out and just want to see what's going on. They're out there with their cameras, but they're putting themselves in harm's way and potentially setting themselves up for a criminal future. When you look at some of the things that are happening here, somebody could easily be killed. And if you're part of that, then you're going to be facing those charges as well. I talked to the DA just a couple of minutes ago, and the DA will file felony charges on individuals where it's appropriate, but won't be shy about doing that where it is appropriate. And also the potential for federal charges, given the type of environment we're in. And, you know, the federal authorities don't play. And
So there's that narrative being completely annihilated by the Los Angeles police chief. That was him last night, just around 11. Let's see, it's 8. Around 11:30 Eastern time last night, speaking to the media, saying that the National Guard being at two facilities in Los Angeles had no impact. His direct quote was, "There's not enough of their presence to make a difference." And so that narrative is being completely counteracted by the individuals on the front line. If Gavin Newsom can shout from his ivory tower this morning about how this is Donald Trump's fault, about how this is the Republicans' fault, how they've agitated this situation. But here you've got the actual police chief, who you were just hearing from was Jim McDonald, the chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, completely countering that claim. And again, this proves the point explicitly that this is not about law enforcement. This is not about the National Guard being on the scene. Hell, I would argue it's not even about the immigration policy. The Democrats like Gavin Newsom, Democrats like Karen Bass, and the rest of the media who is stoking this on are using this using this situation for their own advantage to demagogue Donald Trump. The reality is it's not going to work. People see the pictures that you heard from the chief talking about the commentary and some of the things on social media. They see firsthand what's going on. They watch the cars burning. They see people streaming out of stores with boxes and looting and committing acts of violence and crime. This narrative, it doesn't work. This narrative doesn't hold any water. This is a losing battle once again for the left. Civil unrest is not something that the Democrats do well, that is seen in a favorable light. If you ran a flash poll on Americans this morning and asked them, are they in favor of what they saw in Los Angeles, I would suspect that you would find that the vast majority of people, potentially 80+%, would say absolutely not. If you showed them pictures of burning cars, if you showed them individuals looting stores in downtown Los Angeles and throwing rocks and bricks and mortars and other things at law enforcement, if you asked them if that was a situation that was something that they were in favor of, I suspect you would find the answer is not very positive for the Democrats. I've got some more audio from the LA police chief in Chief McDonald and his update last night, talking about the situation that law enforcement is dealing with on the ground, plus some other thoughts and commentary on this as well, as the Nick Craig Show continues live this morning. Before we head on into that, I want to tell you about the Law Group here in Wilmington. When legal challenges arise, make sure you trust the Law Group. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of our state. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in the position where you need a strong defense, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved promptly. Great news, they're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call, 910-251-6088, or their website, lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the Law Group's continued support of the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, and X, and 24/7, wherever you get your podcasts. Continuing our coverage this morning of mostly peaceful protests, as it's described by Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, MSNBC, CNN, and all of the other left-wing media outlets across the United States. This morning on the Nick Craig Show, thanks for spending part of your Monday with us. So mostly peaceful. Right? This is the go-to term for the left, right? Because they don't want to say riots. That paints everything in a very negative light. It's not a good, when somebody closes their eyes and thinks of the term riot, it's not a popular image. It's not something that plays well politically for the left. So they go and claim that it's just mostly peaceful, that these are just people standing on the side of the street, waving their flag. They're not doing anything. They're not bothering anyone. And if that were true, we probably really wouldn't be talking about that this morning, but that's not the case. Here's the LA police chief yesterday evening talking about the situation that his officers are facing firsthand.
Issue, and the federal authorities have the right to be able to do what they're doing. As far as people worried about the violence that we're seeing, this violence that I've seen is disgusting. It's escalated now since the beginning of this incident. What we saw the first night was bad. What we've seen subsequent to that is getting increasingly worse and more violent. Tonight we had individuals out there shooting commercial-grade fireworks at our officers. That can kill you. And we have adapted our tactics to be able to have a chance to be able to take these people into custody and to be able to hold them accountable. We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing. They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers, to throw at cars, and throw at other people. We've seen people with hammers, and you've broadcasted, breaking the bollards behind the federal building and taking the rocks, if you will, or pieces of concrete, and throwing them at officers. We've had liquid of who knows what description thrown at officers. There's no limit to what they're doing to our officers. And again, as I mentioned in my statement, I can't thank our folks.
Well, that paints a very different picture, does it not? That's not the narrative that's being painted by MSNBC. That's not the narrative that's being painted by Gavin Newsom. Again, here's the tweet. Let's get this straight. Local law enforcement didn't need help. You just heard from the chief of police in Los Angeles that they've been overrun by protesters, that they've been overrun by this situation. So who do you trust here? Where do you go for your accurate source of information? Right? We always hear from folks, trusted forms of media, trusted sources of misinformation. Don't buy into online misinformation. So let's look at that. Where's the trust here? Who is the more accurate source of information on whether the police are in a situation that they can handle or not? Is it the California governor in Gavin Newsom? Or is it the chief of police in the city of Los Angeles? Every single time I'm going to put my trust in the chief of police in Los Angeles. I'm of the strong mindset that he is a far superior source of accurate information than Gavin Newsom or Karen Bass. This guy is on the front lines. His officers are on the front lines of this situation, talking about how commercial-grade fireworks are being shot at them. People are bringing in cinder blocks, breaking them in the middle of the road, and then hurling them at law enforcement. That's the mostly peaceful protest that I'm supposed to believe is going on. That, God forbid, and had Trump not deployed the National Guard at two very geographically small locations, that wouldn't be happening. The National Guard didn't get deployed until yesterday. This went on Friday night and Saturday night in Los Angeles before the National Guard was deployed. It's a complete farce that's being set out by Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, and the rest of their folks on the left. In watching MSNBC for a little while last night, I had the YouTube TV does this great thing where you can have it'll show Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and BBC all in one screen. And so you can kind of see what's going on and you can flip the audio back and forth. And so I was listening to MSNBC for a little while, and guest after guest, expert after expert just kept talking about the National Guard and Trump and the ridiculous nature that's going on and the chaos that he's causing. It's like the only thing they mentioned. Meanwhile, on the other side of the screen, they're showing cars burning in the side of the road and people shooting fireworks at law enforcement. They don't want to touch the issue at hand. The reality is this all comes back to immigration. This all comes back to what happened on Friday with ICE and their strategic raids across Los Angeles, rounding up individuals and putting them in federal custody for what? Not doing anything wrong, right? According to the left, just minding their own business. No, these individuals were put in federal custody because they were illegally in the country. ICE had information, had some sort of intel, regardless of where it came from, to believe that there was a large number of people illegal immigrants in a certain area, and decided to carry out law enforcement action as they have the jurisdiction and the authority to do so. Because again, immigration policy is not set by Gavin Newsom. It's not set by Mayor Karen Bass. It's not set by MSNBC or CNN. It's set by the President of the United States and the federal government. Like it or not, you can cry about it all you want. That's the reality of the situation. Democrats don't like this immigration policy, which, by the way, they're once again on the wrong side of. You can look at political polling, even recent political polling, and it will show you very clearly that there is a majority of people in favor of mass deportations. What was it, that CBS News, I think it was a CBS News poll about a month ago, showed that 56% of Americans are in favor of mass deportation. Do you think these images, do you think these pictures out of Los Angeles make that number go higher or lower? The answer is absolutely, it makes those numbers go higher. The people were already in favor of these policies, 56%. Something that is as controversial as immigration policy. When you have 56% of people agreeing with an issue, that means overwhelmingly that you've got a problem if you're on the opposite side of that. That is a clear, distinct victory for these policies that have been played out by this, that are being executed by this administration. So Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and the rest they can bury their head in the sand all they want. They can post on X and they can talk about how this wouldn't have happened without Trump. They're on the wrong side of the issue. And that's what makes this issue, that's what makes this situation so interesting. Not only are they on the wrong side of the issue as it relates to immigration, they're also on the wrong side of the issue as it relates to people being in favor of hurling bricks, rocks, cinder blocks, fireworks, water bottles, and whole sorts of other things at law enforcement. They're on the wrong side of both issues. And so where do you go from here? When you are on the wrong side of both of these issues, things that are, turns out, very unpopular with the American people, what do? It appears that Gavin Newsom is just going to dig his heels in. That Karen Bass is going to just dig her heels in the sand on this and hold the line. That's a stupid political strategy. Makes absolutely no sense. We're getting some, we did get some other commentary on this. Kamala Harris had some comments to make. What did the former vice president have to say about this in her statement yesterday? Quote, "Los Angeles is my home. And like so many Americans, I am appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city." What do you think the next word is going to be? The next sentence. She's appalled by what she's witnessing in the streets. You think she's going to talk about the riots? You think she's going to talk about the self-driving Waymo cars that were burned in the streets yesterday? Think she's going to talk about the LAPD headquarters having the windows shattered there? How about fireworks being shot at law enforcement? What do you think her next sentence is? Let's start the statement over again. "Los Angeles is my home. And like so many Americans, I am appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. Deploying the National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. In addition to recent ICE raids in Southern California and across our nation, it is part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division." So that's what Kamala Harris has to say about what's going on. Not that she's appalled by citizens, her fellow Los Angelinos, attacking law enforcement. She's not appalled that cars are being burned in streets across the city. She's not appalled that hundreds of protesters are blocking the freeway. She's not appalled by any of that. She's appalled that the National Guard is deployed in 2 areas to protect 2 federal buildings. She continues, "This administration's actions are not about public safety. They're about stoking fear. Fear of a community demanding dignity and due respect. Protesting is a powerful tool, essential in the fight for justice. And as the LAPD mayor, as the LAPD mayor and governor have noted, demonstrations in defense of our immigrant neighbors have been overwhelmingly peaceful. Bullshit. I continue to support the millions of Americans who are standing up to protect our most fundamental rights and freedoms. Man, Harris taking a real strong approach here. She's not even talking about the insanity that's unfolding. I guess if you just don't mention it's happening, maybe it's not. You know, that's kind of an interesting approach. If she releases a statement and doesn't even mention the comments from the LA police chief, that they're overrun, that their sworn members of law enforcement in Los Angeles are having fireworks shot at them, or having cinder blocks thrown at them, or having God knows what kind of liquids tossed at them, then I guess maybe it's not happening. She doesn't even talk about the violence. She just wants to act like it's not happening at all. And so who's the enemy in her statement? Well, of course, Donald Trump. Whose fault is it that this is happening? Not the agitators in the streets. Not the Antifa members that have their entire face covered while they're pouring lighter fluid on a car and lighting it on fire. Not their fault. No. Can't possibly be those agitators. It's the freaking president's fault. Damn Trump, once again, causing all of these problems. If he just didn't do this, then none of this would be happening. If he hadn't sent in the National Guard on Sunday, there's no reason that cars would have been on fire Saturday in Los Angeles, right? The whole situation is absurd. The president was out yesterday, was asked a question about this. He was standing with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Here's the president's response to this situation.
Question for Marco. California could face federal charges if they stand in the way of the deportation. Something that Poland may have suggested. If they stand in the way of law and order, yeah, they will face charges. Thank you very much.
He's talking about the officials. The question there was officials in Los Angeles are standing in the way of law enforcement. Are they going to have a problem? And he says, absolutely. California officials will face federal charges if they stand in the way of law and order. It's not a controversial statement. Why would they not? If you're a federal official, whether you're the mayor of Los Angeles, Congress member, got some video of Maxine Waters, if you're going to stand in the way of ICE, if you're going to stand in the way of federal officials trying to do their job, similar to what you saw in New Jersey back a couple of weeks ago, yeah, you're absolutely going to be prosecuted by federal officials. Your guys' reign at this stuff is over with. I know it's probably taken a little bit of time to kind of click in, to adapt to the ever-evolving political situation that we find ourselves in right now. But I'll remind everybody again, you guys lost. Democrats, your policies, your platforms, your way of going about governance was on the ballot in November of last year, and you lost. You lost the federal government from the executive level. You lost Congress for both the House and the Senate. And in many states across the U.S., you lost big time in state and local government races, whether you're talking about governor races, mayoral races, whatever it might be. You guys were on the ballot in November and you lost. Your policies are so unpopular that the American people, under no circumstances, completely rejected what went on. Completely rejected the radical progressive agenda and ideology that you push forward. So you don't have any more moral high ground to stand on. You guys aren't in charge anymore. And so there's a literal new sheriff in town in President Donald Trump. And if you want to run counter to that, that's fine, but you're likely going to pay the price for it. Here's Maxine Waters in all of her glory attempting to get into an immigration facility yesterday in California, having the door slammed on her face. This is pretty funny to watch.
No, I want you to... Hello. Congresswoman Waters, I just came to use my congressional authority to check on David.
Ma'am, our lobby is secure right now to all visitors.
Excuse me, I need to get in.
Contact our public apparel.
I need to get in.
What are you hoping to do, Congresswoman?
I just want to see David Werta. Right.
Would a congressperson normally be able to enter the...
Normally, yes.
What is happening here?
Well, there were some of the authorities, I don't know who they were, and I'm trying to get in to see David Werta, who they have arrested. He is the head of SEIU local union here. I don't know why he was targeted. I don't know what they're doing with him. I don't know whether they're going to deport him. I want to report back to my caucus about what's happening, but they have...
Boy, ain't that a great video. Sorry for those folks that are listening this morning. I'll have the link up on the show notes over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. I'd highly encourage you to check out the video. Maxine Waters in all her glory going up to some sort of immigration facility and is said, "Oh, I'm here to use my congressional oversight." And the guy goes, "Yeah, the lobby's closed to visitors," slams the door and says, "Contact our public information office." Great. Your congressional, the lobby's closed to visitors. Why? Oh, because there's an angry mob standing outside the door that wants to burn the facility to the ground and torch it. Now, that's why the facility is closed. Hopefully a humbling moment for the Congresswoman from California. Door slammed on her face because she's trying to use her congressional oversight. I'm here to use my congressional authority. Great. Well, contact our press office. So here's another thing that's got everybody kind of freaking out over in California. Here's a statement yesterday from U.S. Northcom, which is under the Department of Defense. This is a statement they released yesterday. It says, by the direction of the Secretary of Defense, that would be Pete Hegseth, and in coordination with the U.S. Northern Command, approximately 2,000 California Army National Guard soldiers have been placed under federal command and control in the Title 10 status to support the protection of federal personnel and federal properties in the greater Los Angeles area. Okay, that doesn't seem too outrageous and too absurd. As U.S. Northcom Land Components Command, U.S. Army North stood up Task Force 51 with a 2-star general as a ground command and control element over the Title 10 forces. At this time, there are approximately 300 members of the California Army National Guard's 79th Infantry Brigade Combat Team deployed at the following locations in the greater Los Angeles area: Los Angeles, Paramount, and Compton, California. This is where everybody's freaking out. Additionally, approximately 500 Marines from the 2nd Battalion and 7th Battalion are also prepared to deploy status should be necessary to augment and support DOT's protection of federal property and personnel efforts. So now the argument shifted, and this is all part of the greater effort being brought forth by radical progressives like Gavin Newsom, that the Marines are on the ground. The Marines are doing all of these terrible things. The Marines and the federal government are here. Now, you guys can't control your own situation. You guys don't have the ability to deal with this civil unrest. It's obvious. You heard from the police chief. You even heard from the mayor saying the same thing. But they're real pissed that Trump's involved in this whole thing. So there was this letter sent out yesterday, which, by the way, Governor Josh Stein signed on to. The letter reads as follows. President Trump's move to deploy California's National Guard is an alarming abuse of power. Governors are the commanders-in-chief of their National Guard, and the federal government activating them in their own borders without consulting or working with a state governor is inefficient and dangerous. Further threatening to send U.S. Marines into American neighborhoods undermines the mission of our service members, erodes public trust, and shows that the Trump administration does not trust local law enforcement. Now, I just read you the statement from U.S. North Command. They did not say that the U.S. Marines were going to be roaming through American neighborhoods. They said that those 500 Marines were on standby to help out the California National Guard if they were unable to secure those federal positions in those federal buildings. It goes on to read, it is important that we respect the executive authority of our country's governors to manage their National Guards, and we stand with Governor Newsom, who has made it clear that violence is unacceptable, which he has not, and that local authorities should be able to do their jobs without the chaos of this federal interference and intimidation. These people are freaking nuts. This gaslighting, this attempt to rephrase this whole situation is absurd. You saw the pictures. You saw the videos. You've heard from the individuals in charge. And what they are telling you is a very different picture that is attempting to be painted by Gavin Newsom and the mayor and Karen Bass. They want to paint the picture that the situation is under control and that nothing is going on. Meanwhile, you turn on the news and you see cars burning in the streets of Los Angeles, police having fireworks shot at them and cinder blocks thrown at them, but they want to tell you that everything is fine. They want to pretend that nothing is happening. It's absurd. You can see it with your own eyes. You don't need to have some liberal pundit on MSNBC tell you what's going on. You can see it with your own eyes. I will admit it's kind of funny to watch. Not the situation itself. This part of it is kind of funny to watch. Because we know what the real story is. We have social media. We have the internet. We have alternative news outlets and sources that are able to actually show you what's happening so that you don't have to read this bullshit statement from Gavin Newsom and go, Trump might be in the wrong on this whole thing. And I'll point out on this letter, Governor Josh Stein signing off on it as well. It's a statement from Democrat governors on Donald Trump's use of California's National Guard. So he is all in favor of this as well, and obviously doesn't believe that there's any significant issue, any serious issues unfolding out there in California. So it's a mess of a situation. It's something that, once again, could have been avoided. It's something that if officials in California were actually serious about getting these groups under control, if officials in California were actually interested in providing some level of safety and security to not only their law enforcement, but to the citizens in which they represent, president's name wouldn't even be talked about right now. President Donald Trump would have had absolutely no reason to deploy the National Guard. But because Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass were unwilling to tell these protesters to stop, because they were unwilling to have local law enforcement take control of the situation, the federal government has stepped in under the jurisdiction that they have with the National Guard. If Gavin Newsom wants that to stop, then he should encourage the mayor to encourage her police chief to get this situation under control. And I'm sure he's trying his best. But it's a rough situation when you have thousands of masked individuals roaming the streets of Los Angeles, blocking highways and attacking law enforcement. It's a very, very tough situation. It's a very dynamic situation to be dealing with. They're not serious about it because, again, it's their voters. They're not serious about it because they would have to tell their own people that this is not allowed. They would have to scold their own supporters and say, stop burning cars in the middle of the road. Stop shooting fireworks at law enforcement. Stop throwing cinder blocks at them. Stop breaking windows. Stop looting stores. They don't want to do that because then they're going to piss off their voting bloc. This is again all the major problems that the left deals with right now. So an unlawful assembly was issued last night by the Los Angeles Police Department. They started moving in and getting the crowd, dispersing the crowd. It's all going on right now. Tom Homan is jumping in on this as well. Gavin Newsom saying, I'm going to stand up for California. I'm going to stand up for this, stand up for that. I'm very curious how much deeper into the week that this situation is going to go. It started on Friday, really got going Saturday and last night. Be curious to see if some similar actions take place today or if it was really just kind of a weekend thing and everything gets back to normal in Los Angeles. It'll be an interesting saga to continue to keep an eye on. We'll continue to do it right here on the Nick Craig Show. And again, I'll have links to everything this morning in our show notes available over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. Thanks to everybody that continues to support the show financially on Patreon. You can do so for as little as $5 or $10 a month if you believe that you're getting some value out of the show. Patreon.com/Nick Craig. Appreciate everybody's support. Thanks for being here. And once again, thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support as well. You can visit them online by visiting their website, lawgroupnc.com, or giving them a call at 910-251-6088. That's going to do it for the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this Monday morning on YouTube, Rumble, and X, and 24/7 wherever you get your podcast. Have a great day.